bond issue for the Sequim School District. Voters in the district, which covers the eastern part of the county to Blue Mountain Road, plus a small area in Jefferson County, will see a proposal for a $49.3 million bond issue on the November 3rd ballot. If passed, the tax rate to repay the 20-year bonds would be 61 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value. Combined with the operations levy of $1.58 per thousand, the total local schools tax rate in 2016 would be $2.19 per $1,000 of assessed value. The school district would use the bond funds to build a new elementary school, add 4 classrooms and a gym at Gray Wolf Elementary, remodel 2 buildings at Helen Haller to house the district's alternative learning program, modernize the district-based kitchen, add 6 science classrooms and band and choir rooms at Sequim High School, renovate part of the Sequim Community School building to provide a central warehouse and maintenance facility, and demolish the rest of that building. Brian Gibson from Citizens for Sequim Schools will speak in support of the measure. Brandino, I'm sorry, I just read that completely wrong, sorry. I sort of combined both of you, yes. Speaking in opposition is Sequim resident and former business owner, Brian Carter. We flipped a coin to see who would go first with an opening statement of no more than 1 minute, and Brandino Gibson won the toss. We've asked the speakers to address the following questions in their opening remarks, which again is limited to 1 minute. Their qualifications to speak for or against this measure, why voters should vote for or against this measure, and what will be the most serious impact if the popular vote goes against their position. Brandino Gibson has a bachelor's degree in workforce education training development from Southern Illinois University. He is retired from the Air Force and currently works for the Employment Security Department. He spent the previous 10 years as director of Lake College and Cambridge Junior College in Yuba City, California. Brandino is the vice president for Citizens for Sequim Schools and is a parent of a Sequim middle school student.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee, and thank you everybody for showing up tonight. First and foremost, I'm a concerned parent of a middle school student, but I'm also the current vice president of Citizens for Sequim Schools. There's several issues that need to be resolved, and we're going to talk about all those tonight. But mainly, our kids, Sequim kids, need to be in safe, secure, permanent buildings that meet with today's and tomorrow's educational standards. Currently, our kids do not have adequate, equitable classrooms to learn in. We continue to add temporary buildings that house our youngest kids. Helen Haller has a main campus with sections that don't even have good usable bathrooms for them. Our high school science classrooms are temporary buildings that aren't even certified. If we can continue to ignore these problems, but they're not going to go away. But by voting yes, we give our children equitable schools to meet current class size and educational needs. Voting yes will provide equitable science classrooms to carry our kids to the future. Voting yes will help properly feed our children, and voting yes gives Sequim community children the equitable schools they need to ensure their educational future.
Brian Carter is going to speak in opposition to the bond. Brian has lived in Sequim for 4 years and the United States for about 20 years. He has worked in construction and building maintenance, transport, farming, and most recently he owned and operated Kiwi's Fish and Chips in Sequim. Brian Carter.
Thank you. I'm here voting against the levy because a classic thing in the paper last week was, what part of no don't people know? It's been voted down twice. Now they're going for a thing $200,000 less than what they voted for last year, and so we've decreased it a lot. When you go to school, you go there to learn, you don't worry about the building you're in. I've spoken to teachers, I've spoken to parents, and I've spoken to the children of Sequim, and not one has said our education is not good because of the buildings. Their main concern is the administration, the teachers and the drugs. That's why building new schools here will not improve the education for the children here. Clean up the act at the school and then maybe go for a school bond to build a decent school. There's nothing wrong with the buildings. I've been through a lot of them. They need retrofitted and upgraded. Fair enough. Not new buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, speakers. Next, we'll take your questions, and both speakers will have an opportunity to respond to all the questions. Again, keep your questions to 30 seconds or less, and responses will be limited to 1 minute. I will then give each speaker 30 seconds to respond. They can waive the chance to respond if they would like. Once again, Barbara is at the microphone to assist you. Please watch the timers, who will raise a card when you have 10 seconds left to finish your question. Volunteers have index cards. Raise your hand and they'd be glad to give you one. We planned for about 25 minutes for audience questions. I'd like to start with this question. And in a sense, Brian Carter has answered this. But in your opinion, what is the relationship between school facilities and academic achievement? And we'll start with Brandino.
So when I took on this task, I went out and first thing I did is I said, let me go look at the schools. I want to see what the issues are. We're trying to prepare our kids for the future. We're utilizing antiquated equipment. We're utilizing antiquated classrooms. Our science labs don't even work. How can we teach current science in labs that don't work? We have, my daughter is a middle schooler, and she's even raised these concerns herself. The classrooms need to be fixed. We're continually putting kids in temporary buildings. We just put a new temporary building up here that is on the outside of the elementary school that doesn't even have a PA system in it. We can't put a PA system. How can they be safe in those environments? It's important for our kids to be in safe, equitable, adequate environments for them to learn properly.
Brian Carter.
Okay, the safety thing is a bit of a misdemeanor, I think. Fair enough, you see the shootings and all around other schools. And so now everybody's terrified that our kids are going to be attacked at school.
Brian, please put the microphone closer to your mouth. Thank you.
Okay, is that better?
Thank you, much better.
Okay, there's, fair enough, the safety, it comes into it a little bit. But then they talk about the old antiquated buildings and all, porta buildings. Everyone that's here, I guarantee, had some time in a porta building, bringing up, going to school. It hasn't hurt them in the past. Why now do they all of a sudden need a brand new building to be smart? I guarantee all the people that are smart in history haven't grown up in a brand new school building. It's the teachers that can teach. Doesn't matter where they are. If they can teach even under a haystack. They don't need a brand new building to teach.
Mr. Gibson, do you want to respond? You have 30 seconds.
So the thing is, what we continue to do is just add more temporary buildings. We're throwing more temporary buildings onto these campuses. And at what point do we stop and we actually build a real campus for these kids? We're reaching these limits under the McCleary law. We're going to have to cut down on our class sizes. We don't have the room to do that. So we're going to just continue to add buildings onto temporary buildings onto the outside of these for them to learn in. We have to meet those class standards. And we can't do that without building new buildings.
Mr. Carter, you have 30 seconds for
You go on about the new buildings for the schools and all. The last thing was all the new students coming into the town. I've talked to realtors. The people that are coming into Sequim, no new kids coming here, or very few. I know a doctor that come here, brought a family, 5 children, homeschooled them, because he doesn't like the education the way it's done at the school here. Nothing to ask about the buildings, nothing to do with the buildings. It's about the adequacy of the teachers and the administration.
Are there any questions for the for the two speakers on the bond issue?
Marcia Carr. Brian sort of talked about this. I wondered, what is the projected enrollment for 2016, 2017, based on what? Are we getting more students coming in and therefore we need more buildings, or does anybody know?
Do either of you know?
Well, according to the realtors, there's more old senior people coming in than students. And the people that are leaving Sequim are taking their families away because of, a lot of it is because of the quality of the education. And I've spoken to several people that have left in the last 2 months. And I used to get them come into the shop and tell me, and that was their reason for homeschooling and the other schools in Sequim getting the children, not the buildings.
Mr. Gibson?
Well, I don't know exact the numbers, but I do know that also as we move forward, again, as I state, under the new regulations under McCleary, we have to have additional classrooms to meet those class size standards. Right now, we're pushing those limits, and those limits are going to be down to 17 to 18 kids per classroom by 2018. We cannot continue to do that. We can't meet that need without having additional classrooms. So the other additional classrooms are, I guess, throwing more portable buildings up that we don't have room for. They're going to cost continuous money, additional money in order to do that. And also putting them on, as we just found with the new one we just put out on here on Haller, can't even meet standards to get PA systems and fire alarms and those kinds of things in. They require updated electrical equipment that we can't meet those in those temporary buildings. So we need permanent buildings in order to meet those needs.
Any other questions?
Patricia Allen. I've seen the teachers and things out on the corner saying, vote yes, vote yes. I would like to have an accounting of where the previous levies have been spent and how. All I hear is, we need money, we need money. But how are you spending it?
Mr. Gibson?
Well, the school budget is public record. It can be accessed at any time. And also our school district and the budget is checked on an annual basis, and there haven't been any inadequacies in any of those. The way the budget is laid out is little money goes towards facilities. We don't have money to build classrooms. We don't have money to upgrade classrooms. That's not within the budget. Budgets for building schools and all are come through by our state regulations by bonds. That's the way they're laid out. And so to increase and build the new schools and fix these schools, the only way to do that is through a bond.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah, I've been down to the school there a couple of times, walked in the administration building, there's people walking around, they haven't got a clue what they seem to be doing. They run backwards and forwards. Surely you can cut back on some of that to save a bit of money. And, you know, as far as temporary buildings going up, being able to put fire alarms on it, haven't you ever heard of running a cable to hook it up? That's how you do it in a garage or an outside shed. You run a cable, you put a fire system in there, you put a PA system in. It's only a matter of running a cable, and there's contractors here that know how to run cables. You know, to say that they can't be hooked up with fire suppressant, that's an absolute fallacy. That can be done, and cheaply and easily, by a local contractor.
Would you like to make a response, Mr. Gibson?
So we can cut back on administrative staff. Currently, our school district is allotted 12 staff members, and we only have 11. So we're operating on less staff than we are allotted to have. And how much money do we think that our staff are making that we're going to save enough money to build new schools by cutting our staff? And we could get rid of all of our administrative staff, and in 25 years we couldn't build a new school. So that's not going to work. We have the money that we have. We're limited by what the state offers us, and that's what we spend.
Are there other questions?
My name is Daisy Holzman, and I'm wondering if you could explain to me about these classrooms that are inadequate, specifically the bathrooms and science. Why can't they be fixed? I mean, is there a reason that they cannot be fixed?
We're going to start with Mr. Gibson.
Okay?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, sorry.
Okay, the reason they're not fixed is not that they can't be fixed, it's because they're not fixed because they want new buildings. They don't want the old ones fixed, they want new buildings. That's been the agenda for the last 2 years. The last school superintendent, they had 3 years, full on, get a new bond. He should have been administrating, looking after them old bathrooms, them old buildings. Get someone in and get them fixed. Don't just new buildings, new buildings. Sometimes you have to pull your head in and actually fix something that's broken. You can't always get new.
Mr. Gibson.
So in order to do some of these renovations, first of all, we have to have them empty because they can't be done with kids in the actual classrooms. To do the renovations that are required at Helen Haller would require a lot of time, a lot of money, and the only way to do that would be to have them out of the school. So where are we going to put them while we're doing those renovations, first of all? So what we do is we build a new school, then we renovate Helen Haller for other usage. As far as the science classrooms are concerned, the addition, again, it would take additional money that is not allotted there. We don't have the money, that money's not set aside specifically for those repairs. Those repairs are done and fixes are done by levies and bonds. And in order to do that, we need a levy or bond to make those corrections.
Mr. Carter, would you like to?
Yeah, you had a levy or a bond or whatever it was for $175,000 about 3 years ago that was passed for maintenance and fixes. Where did that money go?
So that's maintenance and operations, and that is for educational maintenance operations, not specifically for fixing buildings.
Well, that's a bit of a thing that gets me because it's stated on the bond thing was for maintenance. And when you think of maintenance, it's maintenance and repairs. It's not to hire another teacher or, you know, maintain your school people that you've got there. Maintenance is maintenance. Maintenance is not employing another teacher or another assistant in the administration. And maintenance is maintenance.
Would you like to respond, Mr. Gibson?
Well, so I guess we're not going to just hire more teachers. You know, we need the teachers in the classrooms. Again, ours is an educational programs and operations maintenance levy. That is to maintain the educational format for our students. It's not laid out there to build buildings and those things.
All right, are there other questions from the audience?
My name is Carol Lichten, and I was wondering if you could speak to the constraints of the special needs programs and how new buildings would accommodate them.
Mr. Gibson.
Okay, so that's a great question. And the thing is, in order to work with these special needs, we need additional classroom space in order to do that. My daughter was a special needs for reading. And so she had to go out to a portable building every day that was not specifically assigned for that because there's no other space for it. So in other words, in order to address these special needs programs and other additional programs we love to have within our community, the only way to do that is to have updated or additional classrooms. And where are we going to get those? Again, we can keep throwing portables out on property that we don't have, or we can build a new school, and then when we renovate Helen Haller, we have additional space that we have that we can utilize that for other usage. Maybe we put special needs into those areas. But in order to meet those special needs, we need additional space in order to do that.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I've met 2 people in Sequim so far that had special needs children at the school here. Them kids were abused by their teacher. Okay, I can name the people if you want. They took they actually had the...
We don't want you to know.
No, but they had the police down at the school about this situation. And the parents actually, or the grandparents actually took the children out of here and they take them to Port Angeles because it's not the buildings, once again, it's the administration or the teachers that were teaching the children, not the buildings.
Well, again, I have a daughter who is a special needs daughter, and she's loved her teacher. She loved her special needs teacher. Probably her favorite teacher she had when she was going through school. There are no allegations, there's nothing out there in our current system that says that we have any issues with bullying from teachers or anything like that. These are speculations, and if there's anything out there, then it would be public record.
Actually, it is public record because the police were called in on it, and the woman came and told me about it, and she hoped that I would bring it up, and that's why I brought it up.
We'll consider that part of your response.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I'm sorry.
that's okay, that's all right. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, that's all, thank you.
Any further questions?
Hi, I'm Sheena Stralin Younger, and first I want to say that having a student at the high school and 2 students in 4th grade and those portables that were just installed this year, my students do complain about it. They do speak up about it, so I'm not sure what students you're talking to, but my kids and their friends are very aware of the inequalities that they're experiencing in these schools because of the facilities. My question, I guess, is going to be just very specific to the science buildings, because my daughter said it took her 20 minutes to stand in line for a 20-second experiment because they don't have the facilities to do it. When was the last time that you toured, Mr. Carter, the science facilities and spent time speaking to the science teachers at the high school, getting yourself educated about exactly the condition that it's in currently?
Mr. Carter,
Yeah, I
you start.
myself haven't been there, but I've...
We're not going to applaud until the end. Thank you.
This is the way the whole Sequim bond thing has been run. As soon as someone speaks against something, they get downcried. Absolutely disgusting as far as I'm concerned, but I haven't been through the science lab, I admit it. How many times did you come into the fish and chip shop and then criticise that? The same thing. People come in there, would never even come there and criticise it. Because I voted no and put a no sign in the window, everybody said you don't care about Sequim schools. Wrong. I've donated money, given things, vouchers. The Sequim Science Lab put one photo in the newspaper, the same photo time and time again, one rusty little sink. And that was their thing in the newspaper, one rusty little sink. And our Sequim Science Labs had it.
Mr. Gibson, would you like to respond?
Well, as I said, one of the first things that I asked to do when I took on this task was, let me go see. Let me go look at, so we had our entire committee that went out and we went to Grey Wolf and looked around. We went to Helen Heller and looked at the classrooms. Then we went to the high school and I was in that science lab and I seen the issues within that science lab. And they have test centers that Bunsen burners don't work. Currently, some of our science club is going over to the middle school in order to do their projects because they can't do it at their own high school. And the cost of fixing that is not only exorbitant, but it's also not able to be done while kids are in school. So we need to build new classrooms in order to put that. And again, we're talking about trying to provide for our kids so they move forward to the future. This is for the future. These are old classrooms, and this is what we expect our kids to learn in.
You have a 30-second response.
You know what an old classroom is? Have a look around the rest of America. There's classrooms here 100 years old and nothing wrong with them. You've got classrooms here that are 40 years old, you say they're past their use-by date. Hell, how long is a classroom meant to last? 10 years, and then we need a new one. You know, if you do the maintenance when it needs done, you'll get life out of a building. It's like a house. If you don't put a new roof on it, give away. Maintenance.
Mr. Gibson.
Actually, the state requirement is 30 to 40 years for expectations for life expectancy for classrooms, so therefore we've reached that point. And with that said, again, you know, our superintendent brought up last night, those were built in 1967, before we put a man on the moon. And what kind of science technology have we had since then and yet we can't improve our own science classrooms to teach them that current science technology.
We have more questions?
Hi, my name is Dave Mattingly. I'm a resident of the community. I don't have kids in school. I haven't had kids in school for a long time. However, I'm a firm believer in this community. Mr. Carter, you listened to the county commissioners earlier, pro-growth, jobs for the community. That brings people in, brings families in. The tribe has lots of ideas for growth. The city has lots of ideas for growth. The question is
You need
what
to tell
makes,
us your question.
the question is what makes you a better informed individual than they are when they say parents and kids are coming to this community and we need schools to handle them. Thank you.
Would you mind taking that first, Mr. Carter?
Yeah, as the commissioners both said, there's a 40% unemployment here, and they got to make them have jobs for a starter. Those unemployed children, or children of the parents are unemployed, they still go to school here. You're not going to, have a look at the statistics. I've talked to realtors here, and they all say, apart from one or two, that most of them say that people that are coming here have no children, and the people that are going away and selling their properties are people with children and cannot and do not want their kids going to school here.
Mr. Gibson, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I moved to this community 5 years ago and I have kids, so I wouldn't say that all of them that are coming here don't have kids. Secondly, to that, I forgot where I was going with that. Well, going back to our commissioners, what did our commissioners talk about? One of the needs and requirements in order to better meet our current employment needs within the community is what? Education. They said education, right? So what do we need to do? We need to educate our kids at this level so they're prepared for the college level. And to do that, we need them in adequate, equitable classrooms in order to meet those requirements. But yet, we would prefer to just leave them back in the 60s, I guess, because that's what we would like to do. But we need to focus on education. Our potential port commissioners said that themselves.
Mr. Carter, would you like to respond?
Actually,
for
they
30
said
seconds?
retraining more than new education. Retraining the workforce that they've got here. They mentioned that more than education. You know, you've got a workforce here already that needs retrained to do the jobs that are available now. You don't need to make more educated people you get 20 educated people for one job. And you've got 40% unemployment that are looking for jobs. So if you go and educate more people in one field, where are they going to work? You know, education's a good thing, yeah, you need it. But you don't need it in a new building.
Mr. Gibson, would you like to respond again?
We're good.
Okay. Other questions?
Lee White, I've only lived here a year. I do know a little bit about education and building. And I addressed this to Mr. Carter. When was the last time you tried to remodel something versus building it new? The cost is unbelievable if you try to remodel. And we need technology in these schools or they're not going anywhere. So that doesn't mean dig a hole in the wall and try to fix it. You got to be able to put room to make the work.
Do you have a question?
The question is, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get the updated things with remodeling?
I'm going to have Mr. Carter start, Mr. Gibson start on this, and then we'll have Mr. Carter speak.
Well, Mr. White, that's a very valid question. How are we going to do that? These classrooms cannot be renovated as they are. We do need to have modern technology in those classrooms, but yet Mr. Carter would say that they're fine like they are. Well, if we want to carry our kids forward into the future with their college needs, we need that technology in those classrooms. And the only way to do that is to redo that infrastructure, but to do that, we need the kids out of the classrooms. It's going to take additional time to be able to correct those problems. And we can work on Helen Haller at some point. We can work on some of those other classrooms, but first thing we need to do is have a place for them to go while we're doing that work. And again, this is about our kids. and what's right and what they deserve for our kids in our community.
Mr. Carter?
Yeah, haven't you ever heard of working when the school's out, like during the holiday breaks? You know, you say you need somewhere to put the children while they're not in, well, you know, you can't work there while they're in school. What about organising it so you do it during the break periods? I brought up a thing to Linda Lingle when she was governor in Hawaii about the schools and that over there and the way they were treating the children and the kids. And I just brought up to her, I said, isn't a kid a baby goat? So you're referring to the children here of Sequim now as kids. You know, why don't you give them the right title? You want education. Treat the children as children, not as kids, not as goats. You know, they're a person, they're a child or a boy or a girl. They're not a kid. You know, treat them with a little bit of respect. You know, you want respect in return, treat them with a little bit of respect.
Mr. Gibson, would you like to respond for 30 seconds?
Sure. Well, let me read my button. Oh, I think it does say our children, our community, and our future.
You haven't referred to it here like that, though.
Are there other questions? We're getting close to, if we have 2 people standing, I think they'll be the last 2 questions.
Yeah, Clallam County Commissioner for a day, Donald Hall. And my question is, how many times do we have to vote no before the administrators get our message? 100 jobs, 3 people qualified. Something is falling apart at the school level. I can put together a VOTEC program that qualify high school graduates for $100,000 a year jobs off the top of my head. But nobody here can seem to break that code. Well, that's a question. How many times do we have to say no before the administrators here get it?
Mr. Carter?
I would say you'll keep voting no, no and no until they get a yes, by the seams of things, until you're worn down and you'll finally say yes. Let's get over it. That seems to be the attitude. It was in the paper last week. Thank you.
Mr. Gibson?
So recently I'm driving my car and my tires have been kind of going, and my front tires, and I've been ignoring them. And then the other day I happened to have them turned where I could actually see the inside and said, oh, that looks a little worse than it was. So I reached down and I realized that there was some of the metal was coming out, and I thought, you know what? These need to be fixed. I need to go get these changed now. Well, you know what? That's where our schools are now. You can continue saying no, but we're going to keep coming back because they need to be fixed. So we're going to go till we have a yes vote. We were 2.5% short last time. We have an excited group. Last night we had over 100 people at our campaign kickoff that were excited. These weren't just school people. This was the community that was there. We have community members that are in here today. This community is excited right now about getting this done. And we have our goal, and our goal is to get this done. And we're going to be voting yes in November.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah, that shows you the arrogance of the yes vote in a way, because it's been voted no twice. They still come back, and as he just said, we're going to keep voting and voting and voting until it gets passed. So the answer to your question, never ending.
Mr. Gibson?
Well, you know, and I understand. So the first vote actually was for a larger bond. And so the committee went back and we looked at it, or they looked at it. I wasn't part of that committee, but they looked at that and they determined that, okay, these are what our real needs are. These things that are on this current bond are what our real needs were. So that's what we proposed the last time. We were very close last time, and now I think that as we get the word out more and we get more of the parents understanding what the need are, we're going to be there.
And our last question.
Jerry Sam, I live in Sequim. I guess it's more of an information kind of question. Mr. Carter's saying we ought to maintain these buildings and repair them. What I heard you say, Mr. Gibson, I think, and that's what I want to clarify, is we don't have any money to do that. Well, if we're going to invest $50 million in new facilities and new buildings, what percent of that's being set aside for future maintenance so they don't end up just like the ones we have today? Follow on that is we have 29 temporary buildings. I think the brochure says the oldest one is 20 years old. Yeah. How many of the 29 buildings are going to be replaced with this plan?
Okay, Mr. Gibson, would you start, please?
Well, that's a good question, and the goal is all of them, to get rid of all the temporary buildings. You know, the problem is, and we talk about, we got 29 right now, well, in the next 2 years, we need to add 10 more classrooms. That's 5 more temporary buildings that we're gonna have to put up somewhere. We don't have the room to put them anywhere. And that's at a cost of about $1 million in order to add those classrooms and get them configured to be able to be utilized for the classrooms to meet the requirements that we have coming up here. So the goal is to not have temporary classrooms. The goal is to get the permanent classrooms. And those renovations, again, can't be done while the kids are in the classroom.
Mr. Carter?
I'm a little bit confused here. You've got no room for more temporary buildings. You've got to have the children out of the classrooms if you have to update them. Here you are going to build new buildings. Where are you going to put the children when you're building the new buildings? And where are the new buildings going to go? You know, are they going to go where the temporary buildings are now? So you've got to displace them temporary buildings, put the children out of there somewhere, and build a new building. It's going to take you 18 months to 2 years to build a new building. Where are those children going to go for the 2 years that are in the temporary buildings that you're going to shift to make room for the new building? Where are they going to go?
Well, where they're going to go, they're going to stay where they're at while the building's being built, because what we're going to do is we need 10 acres. It's laid out pretty specifically on what we need. We have to have 10 acres. It has to be built in the growth section of the in the urban growth area, and it's going to be built on the east side. So while that's being done, then the students will continue going to their classroom. Once the new school is completed, then they'll leave the other classes, and then they'll be able to renovate that school in order to make it usable.
Mr. Carter, would you like to?
So you're going to buy 10 acres of land out on the east side, build a new school, and then rip all these other buildings down and throw them away.
No, that's...
Well, you're going to keep the old buildings then and use them still?
We'll renovate those buildings for usage for other additional classrooms, like potentially special needs classes or other overflow as we continue to grow within this community. But we'll have the classes empty at that point to where we can do those renovations.
We're overlapping in response
Can I get an
times.
answer to my question on maintenance?
Well,
I asked a specific question. Is there any money in the $50 million set aside for maintaining these new classrooms and new buildings going forward?
would each of you like to respond to that?
Well, the money there is set aside to build the new buildings. You know, having new buildings is going to require less upkeep, and you know, personally, I don't have all the numbers on answering that question for you, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, that's a whole fact of the thing. They've got no numbers on anything specifically that they can actually say for maintenance. You know, they're going to go and retrofit all these old buildings. Where are they going to get the money for that? They're using the $49 million on this new building. Where are they going to get all the money to retrofit all the old buildings? So there's no money for maintenance in that budget.
Unfortunately, you will have only 1 minute to make your closing statement, so we hope you will clarify all of this in that time. And they're going to go in the reverse order, starting with Mr. Carter.
Okay, I come along here hoping to be able to sort of let people know my thoughts on it and why I put the no sign in my window last year and was absolutely crucified for it. I don't agree with the school bond, but I do not in any way agree with the way they attacked me personally and in the business, right throughout the community. But it's surprising the amount of support I actually got from a lot of people that thanked me for standing up for them, because they would have liked to have done it but they were afraid of being persecuted. Myself personally now, I don't give a rat's about it because I'm out of the business and they can't do any more harm. I don't care about the phone calls, the emails, the stuff on TripAdvisor, Facebook about how I hated the schools, I hated the children. That's completely wrong. And I can name names, and I've given them to the police because I got sick of it being abused by phone calls and emails. So the police have it all on record. That's why I come along here tonight, to clarify my point on why I vote no.
Mr. Gibson.
The bottom line is this: we have some issues in our schools. We have inadequate, antiquated classrooms that our children are in right now. And these need to be fixed. The bond is pretty specific. It lays out everything the way it's going to be done. New elementary school, add classes to Grey Wolf, fix our science classrooms at the high school, fix our kitchen that we feed all of our kids in. We didn't even get into that point. And we're at a point to where it's got to be done. As I said, the tires on the car are bald, and they need to be changed. They need to be fixed. And the only way to do that is by passing this bond. And we're relying on the community, which came out in droves last night to support it, to back the bond in November. Just vote yes.
Well, thank you both, and let's give them a round of applause. Remember that we've asked them both to remain after this forum to meet you and take the questions one-on-one. We will begin shortly our final session of the evening with the 6 candidates for the Sequim School District Board of Directors. Feel free to stand up and stretch while the candidates take their seats.